In 1947, just before the Civil War had ravaged Greece, I was born in a small historic village at the Arcadian Mountains, with my androgynica mother and without my father. The village's territorial property rights are from the top of Mountain Tetrachone at 4,557 feet of elevation to the border of Mesonia at 2,800 feet of elevation, where there at the mountainside is situated the miracle church of Saint Theodora of Vasta. This church is known as an amazing little stone church with 17 big trees, and several other smaller have grown on its roof. The Church of Saint Theodora, Agia Theodora of Vasta, considered as one of the most beautiful and most unique churches in the world, has been registered in the Guinness Book as Miracle Church. It dates approximately to the 12th century, and it is entirely made of stone. As I was growing up at this remote mountain area, I had the unique privilege to experience life before many conveniences of electricity, telecommunication, industry, automation, transportation, entertainment, leisure, communication with the outside world other than a mailman on foot when it was only weather permitted, non-political education, and a modern healthy life for a child with doctors and hospitals. As I became able to walk and talk, I had to contribute by taking part and completing some type of chores. In many ways, my young life on the mountains of Vasta can easily be described by the bestseller book of Nicolas Cage, Eleni. When my mother saw the movie, she wanted to know how they could make a movie without our permission. Our family's life was very parallel to the true story as is depicted in his book. My grandfather's old wine tavern that he had built and operated as far as back during the days of the struggles of the area's Turkish liberation, was located at the center of the village. As I had to contribute, I would help my mother operate it when we were not working at our small wall-supported plots of land at the mountainside. As a boy, when I became able to control our donkey, many times I would get 10 drachmas from strangers that made their way to the center of the village and visit my grandfather's old wine tavern for directions and transportation to Saint Theodora. It was then that I started to realize that this little building with the gigantic trees on the roof and the gushing river under it that was providing power to water mill for the use of all the surrounding villages, had to be something special. The strangers did not speak Greek, but I could tell that they were amazed. Ever since I took an interest in the phenomenon, and as I learned about its many versions of stories, and the religious belief of the villages and my mother, I never stopped writing and talking about it. I'm the one that has written the story in the Wikipedia. The only way to travel from the village of Vasta to the lower lands of the southern side of Peloponnese, one must pass by the north wall of the church and the steep rise of the rocky mountainside. I had many occasions to travel through the only passage when I had to visit relatives at the lower parts. I was 11 years old, and I had to go to the lower lands, 3 mountain ranges away, and visit my mother's cousin. On the way back I had loaded my donkey with all kinds of supplies that we couldn't get at the mountains. Before I left to return to the village, we did not realize that there was a rainstorm on the mountains. About 4 hours later, when I came the area where the church is located, I had to cross the place where 2 mountain creeks joined. It was getting dark. The mountain creeks were flooded, and it was impossible for my donkey and me to cross to start the incline towards the village. After walking for 4 hours up 3 mountain ranges, I was very tired. So, I went inside the church. It was dark and scary and very noisy from the river that was gushing underneath. My donkey loaded stood outside the very small door that a person can barely fit by ducking to get inside. Sometime early next morning I was awakened by the noise that my donkey was directing at me, trying to get my attention. She had stuck her head in the door. I woke up in a panic. I felt guilty about my poor donkey stood loaded all night. I was so proud of her for not running away or damaging her load. It could have been the feeling of an 11-year-old boy of the desperation, anxiety, darkness, and the thundering water noise of the mountain creeks and the river under the church echoing of the surrounding mountains from all 4 directions that form the small bowl around the church. But, from that morning, as I walked out of that little stone structure, I never ever felt as a hopeless kid, and I never saw myself as small or never ever thought that I was not good enough to accomplish anything if I wanted to. Call it whatever. Think whatever you want. But 63 years later, many times I still dream that I am in the church, and when I wake up, I always feel that everything is alright. I always feel that I'm lucky in life. And somehow, I always picture my great mother crossing herself in front of that little church under those trees as I remember her.